Pachashig, welcome. Welcome to unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory. Minik Minachin Dishnikos, Algonquin Zaboyer Lake and Dochipa. I was thinking about what to say today for Truth and Reconciliation. A couple of things came to mind. One is that when people say, what can we do for reconciliation? My answer is always, reconciliation is an outcome. It's not, you're missing a step. People are putting the cart before the horse. Unless we have truth, the truth of Indigenous history across Canada is normalized in our communities and in our families and in our cities and in our rural areas, there can be no reconciliation because people don't know what they're reconciling. Willie Littlechild was one of the commissioners for the Truth and Reconciliation, and I heard him speak one time. And he said, someone had asked him to speak, and they said, whatever you want to talk about. And he said, okay, I'll talk about treaty rights. And they said, oh, you're going to talk about your treaty rights? And he said, no, I'm going to talk about yours. Because it takes two to make a treaty. And what does that mean? So people need to realize that that you can't just have reconciliation. You can't just suddenly start doing these things that are going to be for reconciliation. It doesn't work that way. There needs to be a learning period. There needs to be that reciprocity. Indigenous paradigm is based on the relationship. Our whole reality is based on the relationship. That's how we see the world, is through relationships. And with relationships comes reciprocity. And so once the truth is out there and the truth is known and normalized and everybody is aware of it, reconciliation will happen organically. I have never met a person who, once they learned the history of Indigenous people in Canada and the genocidal policies that were created by the Canadian government, once they're aware of that, I have yet to meet someone who didn't say, what can I do? How do we fix this? How can I help? So I think learning and educating ourselves on that history. I think, I was going to tell you a story about light, which now I don't think I will. I'll save that for later. But suffice to know that every human being, every member of creation is born with a light inside of them. And if we see someone whose light is failing, we can share our light. And the beauty of that is that not only does their light burn brighter and stronger, so do ours. So if we remember that and treat everyone with the respect and cherish that light of life that is within everyone, then we're going to start having some truth. And as an outcome, we'll start to have reconciliation. So I'd like to open this space with a few words to the Creator. Kachimikwich Jemnado. Thank you, Creator, for the water, for the plants, for the trees, for the ones who fly, for the ones who swim, for the ones who crawl, for the furred, for the feathered, for the four-legged, and for the two-legged. And thank you for bringing us all together here. Help us to feel truth. Help us to see beauty. Help us to hear light. And help us to share what it is to be a human being with each other, with compassion and with gentleness and with kindness. And help us to improve all of our communities. Kachimikwich, 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 Kachimikwich. Thank you very much.
I would like to recognize and acknowledge the gift of being on Anishinaabeg territory, and specifically on unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin lands. We recognize the two closest Algonquin First Nation communities, Kitigan-Zibi and the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan. We also recognize that in 2021, Ottawa is a gathering place for many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and we honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future. Today, on September 30th, we gather together on this land that is occupied by OCDSB schools and facilities that serve OCDSB students. As members of the OCDSB education community, we share a connection to this day, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in Canada, and a day that we have referred to as Orange Shirt Day. We are students, family members and caregivers, staff members and trustees coming together to honor and remember the experiences and loss of the First Nation, Inuit, and Métis children who were stolen from their families and placed in residential schools. September 30th represents the time of year when this happened each year, and today, the land that our schools and district buildings occupy also represent a place for truth-telling, listening to the truths, and taking actions towards rebuilding relationships of trust, respect, and friendship. We remember today that for Indigenous children, schools have not been places of truth-telling, have not been respectful nor friendly. You may know the story of a student named Phyllis Jack Webstad and her favorite shirt, the orange shirt she picked out as a 6-year-old for her first day of school, a residential school. And as you may know, when Phyllis arrived at the residential school, her orange shirt was taken away from her forever. School for Phyllis and for over 150,000 children who attended the 139 residential schools in Canada was not a place where it was safe to express who she was. As a result of being forced by the Canadian government to attend a residential school, Phyllis and all residential school survivors lost many important things like their own language and their ties to their own families and communities. We also know that many students didn't return to their homes and their families, and in fact lost their lives at residential schools. For Phyllis, she believed and hoped that school would be a place where she could shine and sing and be exactly who she was. She wanted to matter for who she was and for all the gifts and talents and brilliance that she brought with her to school. When we believe and know that Phyllis and every child does matter, we do better. On the lands of our OCDSB schools today and tomorrow, we will do better and demonstrate that every child matters and who they are is brilliant and perfect. I want to set an intention for how we will do better in the schools that are on this land. Let's use this land for sites where all Indigenous students and all students' learning spirits are elevated and set free to develop and soar. Schools that sit on these Indigenous lands will be places that center Indigenous stories of past, wisdom of present, and the knowledge needed for our peaceful future together on the lands of Turtle Island. This land we are on today, together, was land on which Indigenous children thrived with their families and prospered with joy and love before residential schools were ever here. The experiences and the losses as a result of residential schools in Canada have impacts that extend generations beyond the years of operation of these schools. Despite hurt, pain, and trauma spanning multiple generations, this land remains the home to Indigenous brilliance, beauty, strength, joy, resistance, and community love. In this acknowledgement, we can commit to using the land today to listen, to learn Indigenous truths and knowledge, truths about feelings of belonging within families, belonging to the land, and belonging through culture and traditions and elders' guidance and teachings. On these lands, students in the OCDSB will experience the wisdom found in Indigenous ways of knowing and teachings and learn how this can unite people from all cultures towards healing and also in the work ahead to nurture our collective humanity and prioritize the health of Mother Earth. In OCDSB schools, students will be recognized and valued for the sacred learning spirits that lives within each child. Lessons from Indigenous youth such as Kenzie can guide us forward on the path of relationship building with truth and trust for reconciliation when we listen to learn. In an essay contest entry, Kenzie, a grade 7 student, wrote about the importance of education by saying the following. Education is very important to me as it will help me reach my goal in becoming a fighter jet pilot. I am in grade 7 right now, and it will help me to graduate from high school and then university or college. Education will open many doors to more knowledge or opportunities, and it will teach me responsibility. The more education I have, the more opportunities will come. Education will get me one step closer to my dream. My dad has been trapping since he was 12, and he was brought up in the traditional way. He knows the trap line like the back of his hand. He also has skills that cannot be learned in the classroom. He has a different kind of degree. My dad learned different things and the different skills that are not recognized by a piece of paper. I am proud of my dad, and I'm learning from him. So I'm privileged to learn these teachings from my dad. We need papers behind our names to live in today's world, but we still need those traditional teachings to learn who we are and where we come from. Imagine the words of a grade 7 student. As we begin the day of recognition and learning, I want to again acknowledge our place on the lands that belong to the Algonquin Nation. Please set an intention for the actions you will take so that OCDSB schools on this land will be sites that demonstrate the many ways that every child matters and every child will thrive in all experiences and outcomes as OCDSB students. Miigwech.